and welcome to the November Microsoft Product Terms update from the Software Asset Management practice here, version 1. Hey Niamh, hey William, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good, Carl, thanks.
Great. So this month, few updates. This month is quite a short one in terms of the number of updates that we've seen, and some interesting ones that I know you're going to cover off, William. And then there's some light touch updates. So I'll take the first one. It's just around System Center and Windows Server. So this month sees the inclusion of Windows Server 2025 and System Center 2025 as well. Important to call out that they are new versions of the products. Obviously, you had System Center 2022 from last month, and the same goes for Windows Server. So the product terms just reflect those updated versions, which are now available to purchase. In terms of licensing, so I've had a run through the product terms for October and for November, and at face value, it doesn't look like there's any material changes in terms of how the technologies are licensed. So really, it's just the version updates within the product terms have changed. So nothing really to report on that front. So Niamh, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure, Carl. Well, this month there was an update saying that Windows 10 ESUs are, on the product table. So they're not actually in the availability table from what I can see as yet. But it is an entry in the Windows Desktop Operating System page regarding the criteria for Windows 10 ESUs. I suppose it outlines their purchase per device. So in some scenarios, you might need more ESUs than you have, Windows E3 per user subscriptions, if you're not ready to move to Windows 11. But it is going to be, I'm no doubt it'll be on the availability table soon, as Microsoft's commitment is that they would be available to purchase through volume licensing up to a year before Windows 10 goes out of support, which, if you've forgotten, that date is October 14th, 2025. So we're just in under the year. What is interesting, I guess, from the Windows ESUs is that, I remember when the Windows 7 ESUs and the Windows Server ESUs came out, and they were only available to purchase through the enterprise agreement. So it is good for customers that they are available through kind of the other volume licensing programs. Also, I think for the first time, I saw a really good article in The Verge where they're going to be offered to consumers for the first time ever. So if you have any Windows 10 devices at home that you can't upgrade to Windows 11, then you'll be able to keep them secure. Now, from a pricing point of view, it is common knowledge that the price out there for the first year, so ESUs are a 3-year program, that the price for year one is expected to be $61. And then that doubles to $122 for the second year per device, and doubles again in year 3 to $244. So, and also, same as always, if you enter into the ESU program in year 2, you still have to pay for year 1 before you can move forward with that. And so so it's interesting to see and watch this space.
Good, yeah, good to see that flexibility being brought in with the Windows ESUs, and I guess obviously nobody likes paying for ESUs. There's it's quite a big outlay, particularly if you've got it at an enterprise wide level. But some organizations, from a hardware perspective, might not necessarily be ready for that next version of Windows. So be interesting to see the trade-off between upgrading hardware potentially unnecessarily versus the cost of the ESU. Maybe there's a good trade-off there, but it's still good to see that flexibility being brought in.
Let's not forget, if you're using Windows 10 in Azure Virtual Desktop, that ESU costs you nothing.
Right. Which is a good segue to William on all things cloud. William, I know you've had a look at some of the Azure updates this month.
Yeah, so there's 4 in total actually. So the first one's probably the biggest one, I suppose. Windows Server Pay-as-you-go, enabled by Azure Arc, which is the interconnection between on-prem and Azure world, connecting on-premise to cloud. So this is a new mechanism by which customers can essentially use a pay-as-you-go subscription option for Windows Server, as long as it's connected to and registered with the customer's Azure subscription. They must have an underlying valid Windows Server standard or data center license to use the pay-as-you-go option. And there's no additional virtualization rights, and they can only be reassigned. The licenses can only be reassigned within a server farm. Well, that's without limitations, but only once outside and to another server farm every 90 days. So that's pretty standard standard terms for Windows Server. But it's just the fact that it's a pay-as-you-go option. So we were talking about this before, possibly sort of short-term or single-use type scenarios where a Windows Server environment might be only needed for a very limited or short space of time, for example, once a month or at a busy time of year. So it's a way of obtaining the correct Windows licensing without having to buy the whole license. You just rent it for the period required. So it's an interesting development, and it connects on-prem to cloud world as well. So almost bringing an Azure subscription onto on-premises. So the second one was Microsoft Fabric. This very minor one. It's just basically just reiterating the fact that Power BI, customers use for Power BI within Microsoft Fabric is subject to the Power BI service specific terms under the Power BI platform section of the online services. So it doesn't actually specify what the changes are, but it's just reinstating that the terms are there. The next one's a bit strange as well. So Azure Maps, they've called out, there's two restrictions they've called out: navigation and database. So basically it's saying that customers can't use Azure Maps to enable the turn-by-turn navigation functionality within an automatic or autonomous vehicle, and they may not connect to a vehicle's dashboard unless the device is charging for charging purposes. And a customer may not use Azure Maps to create a competing database or service supplied by a third party. So maybe they've found that Azure Maps was so good that third-party navigation devices or services were tapping into Azure Maps for nothing, but it's basically calling out that that's restricted. And also slightly strange is Azure IoT operations. So this is an amendment. It says production use. So customers may install and use Azure IoT operations, but they may not use IoT operations on listed provider clouds. And then they say on non-production use that a customer may install and use IoT operations on listed providers and non-listed providers. So it's, by looks at just saying that you can't really install IoT operations on a listed cloud provider if it's a production environment. I don't know how you'd install it otherwise, but
yeah,
Can't use anything on the listed provider.
you can't do anything on a listed provider. Yeah, but you can if it's non-production. So,
interesting.
yeah.
So
yeah, so it's an eclectic mix, should we say?
Yeah, that Windows pay-as-you-go, Windows Server, should I say, pay-as-you-go update is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Probably not for everybody, but I can definitely see some Excel jiu-jitsu in our future trying to figure out if you've got a sunk cost on Windows Server licenses for software assurance, and you've got an organization that might have seasonal demand or changes in peaks and troughs in terms of capacity throughout the course of a year. There's possibly a cost saving opportunity there, or maybe not. So it'll be interesting to see how that one develops. And I know it did look a little bit clunky in terms of the product terms, so it'll be interesting to see does that somewhat smooth out over the coming months.
Yeah. And what the cost will be as well. So we don't actually know what the cost will be at this stage.
So I think that's it for this month's product terms updates. So as we said at the start, it's short and sweet. If you have any queries or questions on all things Microsoft licensing related, please do feel free to reach out to us here at the version 1 Software Asset Management Practice. We'd like to answer any licensing questions you may have. So until next month's update, cheers, Niamh. Thanks, William. See you soon.